Get back here, you little brat." The words screamed through air behind a flash of orange as a young boy raced across the rooftops, his eyes wide, filled with a mischievous joy, as his grin flashed back at his pursuers. "H.A. Good luck, damned brat." There was a sudden growl as a flash of metal snapped just past the boy's cheek, a blade tasting the slightest bit of his flesh, to draw a thin line of blood as for a moment, a flicker of fear passed through brilliant blue eyes before he darted suddenly in another direction. "Oh, you want to play it that way, huh?" There was a definite tone of challenge in the boy's voice, as instinctively a number of his pursuers flinched lightly in recognition. That tone, those words from the blonde boy. Well, it was best not to consider the possibilities. "Fine, let's play." He ducked immediately into a seemingly random ally, his pursuers hot on his heels before suddenly, their vision was obstructed by a sudden explosion of neon pink and blue. For a moment, only the sound of splattering drips could be heard, along with the rapidly fading mocking laughter as they took note of their situation. An instant, that was long enough for the outrage to set in, anger fueling their limbs as they shot after the boy once more with screams of incoherent rage. And the boy? He simply laughed, his eyes alight with mischief as he would slip down another seemingly random alley. Again, his pursuers gave chase, racing blindly now into the alley, hunting with clouded eyes. Clouded eyes. The boy was eager to take advantage of one by one. The stragglers of the crowd began to drop off unnoticed. Their bodies, bound and hogtied, makeshift gags in their mouths as they lay in a pink and blue spectacle on the streets. Eventually, though, the anger faded among some of the group, slowing them as they once more began to take stock of their surroundings, before one of them looked back over his shoulder and caught sight of the boy finishing his knots on another. The boy paused a moment as he noticed he'd been discovered, a sheepish grin on his lips before he waved back at the man. Hi again. He's behind us." Instantly, the group skidded to a halt, an almost audible screech rising into the air as they turned back to see the boy, standing over the latest in a string of hog-tied, pink and blue-painted figures. "Get him." "Air," the boy scratched the back of his head. "Can't we talk about this?" And no, the group screamed almost unanimously back at him. Actually, I wouldn't mind talking about it." A voice spoke up, a weasel-masked young man raising his hand. As the group turned to glare at the dissenting voice, the boy grinned, giving a wink at the young masked man. "Catch you later, then Weasel-san." Before the group could tear its eyes back to the boy, he was already racing down the street again, bouncing over and around people before disappearing into the crowd. With an angry tick to his features, one of the men glared back towards the masked individual in question. "This is your fault." The man in question struck a thoughtful pose before nodding and grinning slightly behind his mask. "Why, yes, it is. But..." And with that, the man vanished in a swirl of leaves, leaving the rest of the group to growl in response before a man pointed back in the direction Naruto had sped off in, after him. Laughing softly to himself, Naruto Uzumaki ducked behind a random shop door, hiding behind it as he watched the group charge back down the street, trampling over their hog-tied compatriots in the process. Holding back his laughter as long as he could, and certain they were finally out of hearing distance, the boy rolled onto his back and flopped down, proceeding to laugh as hard as he could, at least, until his tear-stained eyes managed to take in where he was. Aren't you a little young to be in a place like this, kid?" The voice barely registered on the boy's ears as he slowly looked around the shop with wide-eyed uncertainty, seeing all manner of restraints, in a variety of material, rope, leather, metal, along with a variety of other sorts of implements. Where am I?" The eyes grew wide, before he looked over at the counter, and at the amused smirk on the woman behind its face. "Well now, aren't you a little cutie?" A throat chuckle escaped the predatory curl of soft lips as she strode out from behind the counter, with the sweet creaking sound of the tight leather of her hip-hugging pants shifting in place. As the staccato click of heels struck the cool floor, she casually brought a hand, covered by a laced black leather glove that ran almost to her shoulder, to the blinds, and took a look outside. "Well now, I'm going to guess you're the one behind the commotion, him? Not too shabby work on the knots, though, a bit uninspired creatively. Uh, he paused, looking up at the black leather corset the woman wore about her chest, cupping the generous swell of her breasts before she looked curiously at him with a cocked brow. The 5-year-old paused suddenly before he cupped his chin between his thumb and index finger in serious thought before grinning up at her. So what would you suggest? The woman laughed softly, her pale lavender, pupilless eyes framed by a head of soft, straight raven black hair. Oh, eager little one, aren't you? If only Hinata had your interest. Well, all things in time, I'm sure. She grinned softly back at the boy as she let the blinds go and chuckled again. I have a few ideas on what you could do, and a few things I could teach you. Yes. The boy immediately went to his knees and bowed somberly. Please, teach me. When those eyes looked back up, there was a look akin to desperation in his eyes. Nobody ever teaches me anything, please. She blinked, taken a bit aback by the look before she studied the boy, the crystalline blue eyes, the whisker marks on his chin, and she reached down, a gentle look of sadness on her face before she nodded and cupped his chest. You're Naruto, aren't you? Huh? How'd you know? There was a blink of surprise as he stared, olishly up into her eyes as she gave him a gentle, reassuring smile. You look like your father, she said simply before eyeing him critically before smiling softly. But you definitely behave like your mother. You knew my parents? There was a pause, tears welling up in his eyes as he looked up at her, hope and desperation shining in those blue orbs. Yes, I did. They were good people and they loved you very much, she smiled sadly at the boy. Don't ever doubt that. Can you? Can you tell me about them? He spoke up, as if to hope was a great, impossible dare. I'm sorry, Naruto, but I can't. Not yet, she spoke sadly, before she offered him a smile. But, I'll tell you what, if you're a good student and master what I have to teach you, I'll do my best to make sure that you know when you're older. You promise? The hopeful look in his eyes would almost shine as he looked up at the women. Yes, Naruto, I promise, she smiled at him before giving him a stern look. But I won't take it easy on you, got it? What I can teach you is one of the most effective styles for capture and conversion of enemy shinobi. Are you up for it? Yes, sensei. Good. Now let's get started. A little over 1 year later. Hey, sensei. The voice was soft and quiet as it spoke, the night sky. I'm sorry you missed me earlier. I don't think Hayashi would have much wanted me around. I've been keeping up with my scrolls, studying the jutsus you taught me, working on my chakra control, studying the scrolls you left me. It's hard. Other than the old man, you were the only one who cared. A soft stream of silver tears began to fall slowly past his eyes. She's beautiful, by the way. They named her Hanabi. Hinata hasn't come out of her room for days, and Hayashi. It's like he's gone. He spoke softly, stroking the simple stone marker with his thumb as he looked over the words written on it. He's so empty now. I'll do my best to keep things going for you. I'll look out for Hinata and Hanabi. He was on his knees now, struggling to stand as the tears only grew stronger. I wish I knew what I could do for Hayashi. I wish I could help them more. I miss you, sensei. I promise you, though, I'm going to be the best at this. I'll show everyone the power you taught me. He smiled a bit as he looked down at the description on the headstone. Beloved wife and mother. He paused a moment before adding 2 words, and teacher. They will learn to respect Bondage Style. The words echoed through the empty night, as Naruto Uzumaki found himself a goal. Roughly 4 years later. Get back here, you brat. Mwah! The laugh echoed in response as a crop of blonde hair flared in the wind, atop a black-clad bouncing body. Think you're gonna catch me? Huh. Why, you little dash? The voice screamed as a group of figures bounded after the hyperactive little figure. You're gonna pay. Don't count on it, suckers. The finger whirled around in mid-leap, his blue eyes flashing as he performed a series of signs, then thrust out with the loose sleeves of his coat. Spider's web. A series of glowing ropes suddenly exploded past the boy's sleeves as they suddenly anchored to the roofs and walls of the nearby buildings, just in time to catch the group of ninja chasing after him. Damned brat. using this stupid joke of a style on us. The rest of the group all stared at the man in absolute horror as the black-clad boy suddenly came to a screeching halt, before slowly turning around, those brilliant blue eyes glinting coldly as they locked onto the man. "What did you say?" The rest of the group instantly paled as they started struggling even more against their bonds. The wave of killer intent rolling off the boy was absolutely staggering as he began to slowly walk back towards them. His thick black trench coat fluttered, ominously, to an unseen wind, exposing his mesh-covered chest and the loose black pants that ran down to the combat boots on his feet. Before him, the group was struggling like mad to get away. As the man who spoke attempted to keep his cool as he shot back, "I said that style's a joke." "Oh, I see." The words came like ice past his lips as he narrowed his gaze at the man. Instantly, a good number of the knots in the web dispelled, releasing everyone but the man. "The rest of you can go. This one is mine." The man instantly began to sweat, rather heavily in fact, as he noticed how his cohorts all almost instantly vanished, leaving him alone before the 12-year-old boy. Summoning up what courage he had, the man stared back defiantly at the blonde. "I'm not afraid of you." A slow, dark chuckle began to escape the boy's throat as he slowly loomed over the man. "Oh, but you will be." Fear engulfed the man. A moment before his consciousness was enshrouded in darkness, and he knew nothing for several hours. Or, at least until he found himself awakening, dangling off a flagpole in front of the Hokage's office, in nothing but an adult diaper, noticeably stained, and a giant pacifier gag strapped to his mouth. It was a lesson in pure, abject humiliation, topped off like a cherry by the brilliant pink bib and bonnet strapped to him, his eyes widening just as the female Jounin and ANBU members were exiting from a weekly debriefing. Needless to say, when he was finally able to talk again, the man never again questioned the validity of Naruto's style. As the Hokage himself shook his head, quietly chuckling at the man's punishment, he turned his head and looked towards the young man responsible for the act, laying lazily across one of his chairs. "Hey, old man." "Hello again, Naruto. Been busy, I see." The man grinned softly as he would slowly return to his seat. "Do you have to keep tormenting the Chunins like that?" Nah. But there weren't enough Jounin or ANBU for my workout, so I had to improvise." The boy gave the old man a fox-like grin as he stretched out. "So I made do with what I had. That guy was just dumb enough to call my style a joke." "Ah, I see." The man nodded in response as he would lightly puff his pipe. "So, what brings you to my office today? I don't believe it's time for your weekly prank just yet. And please, no more of that one technique. My heart's not getting any younger." "Heh, dirty old man." The boy snickered softly. "Nah, I'm here to talk to you about the Genin teams." "Now, Naruto, you know that the Academy makes those decisions, not me." The man protested genuinely as he would raise his hands in protest. "That's even assuming you pass this time." "I don't care. I promised Sensei I'd look after Hinata, and that's what I'm gonna do." There was a stubborn pout to the boy's lips as he glared back at the old man. "Besides, you know I failed the last 2 times just to make sure I graduated in time to get on her Genin team." "Naruto." The old man sighed as he gave the blonde boy a look. "Old man." The boy responded in the exact same tone, before grinning wickedly. "All right, how much is it gonna take?" "Now, Naruto, you know that the position of Hokage is a prestigious and honorable one." The man responded before twitching lightly as he watched the boy pull out a little blue book, with no title out before setting on the table. A Hokage cannot be bribed. A brow arched in response to this. As a purple book was added to the first, a trickle of sweat rolling down the side of the man's face, nor influenced with promises. The boy then brought out a set of photos of a certain purple-haired kunoichi in all manner of compromising positions and lack of clothing that aren't of the absolute highest standard. "I'm sure that Irika will see reason that you'd best be suited to complementing Hinata's abilities." "I'm sure." The boy grinned in response as he waggled his brow at the old man, even as he pushed the books and photos towards him. "Hot off the presses. Won't be available to the public for 2 and 6 months respectively." The old let off a perverted giggle. highly reminiscent of his former student before diving into the book with a happy sigh. Ah, you know how to treat an old man Naruto, truly. Was there anything else I can do for you? Well, I was going to ask for Ino too, but I figured that might be pushing it, the boy responded casually. Though, think about the interrogation squad we could make. And I'm going to guess shifting things around in the process, so a certain Uchiha ends up on an all-male team. The man quirked a brow with a slight smirk. The closeted bastard deserves the extra eye candy to look at. Naruto grinned back with a smirk. Give him Kiba and Shikamaru. Maybe that'll finally get him out of the closet. And off of your ass in the process, the old man responded with a knowing chuckle. Hey, that's what I'm trying to prevent here, the boy shivered softly. I like the broody bastard all right, but seriously, if I have to keep catching him staring at my pants so much. The old man merely laughed in response as he watched the boy, his eyes glittering with amusement. I'll think about it. Of course, knowing you, you try to get the first 4 genin squad with the young Miss Haruno. I'm greedy. What can I say? The boy responded back at him. Besides, all the more research for me. Yeah, you remind me of my old student so much Naruto, Sarutobi sighed softly. You do this old man proud. Naruto twitched lightly in response. Right, old man. Right, I'll catch you later. Of course, Naruto. Of course, enjoy the rest of your day. There was a brief pause for a moment before the man continued. Though, I would appreciate you not scarring any more of my chunin for a time. The boy stretched out softly, his coat rippling slightly at the motion. Meh. I make no promises, it's their mouths. Yeah, off with you then, my boy. You might want to hurry. I do believe I have an appointment with Anko shortly. The boy paused a moment and grinned wickedly back at the man. And this is supposed to do something other than entice me to stay? The old man twitched lightly as he looked at the positively leering boy who was eyeing the door with an almost unhealthy anticipation. Now, Naruto, I would prefer you not destroy my office. Again. Uft, not my fault you get shoddy contractors, old man. Remember what I said about blood loss and heart attacks? Baya, the boy grumbled softly before grinning wickedly as he proceeded to put a pair of papers on the bottom of the 2 seats in front of the Hokage, then made a series of hand signs, before grinning down right evilly. Well, old man, make sure Anko-chan gets a good seat, and you'll get yourself a floor show. See ya? See your old man. You still owe me some ramen. The boy grinned before he slipped over to the window and vanished somewhere along the tower. Of course, the man chuckled softly before looked up to see the door opening, to admit the swaying form of Anko Mitarashi. Ah, hello again, my dear. Please, have a seat. The smirking woman nodded as she moved over to the chair. The throaty scream that exploded through the air moments later was followed by a voice full of feminine, though somewhat impotent rage. Naruto. Heh. The boy practically giggled as he bounced over the rooftops, before dropping himself down into his favorite seat at Ichiraku Ramen with an almost angelic smile. 1 beef ramen, please. Oh, Naruto, you seem to be in a good mood. The smiling face of the young woman working behind the counter greeted him with a slight bow. Does it have anything to do with the flagpole? Heh. The boy grinned in response as he would lean forward onto his elbows, his eyes gleaming with mischief, and Anko-chan scream. She nodded softly before she put a finger on her lip. Though, that doesn't sound like her usual I'm going to kill someone scream. Nah, that was her sitting on an orgasm tag scream. He grinned back at her, an almost cherub-like look of innocence on his face as he would lean slowly forward. Then, I imagine I'll get a nice work out of her when she comes to try and kill me. Naruto. The woman blushed heavily as her father behind her struggled not to let himself explode into a nosebleed. Yes, I am Chan. Those blue, oh so innocent-looking eyes looked up at her. I don't think her trying to kill you is what you have to worry about. Nah, definitely her trying to kill me. She's not a pedo or anything. The boy responded cheerfully as he waited for his ramen. The chunin earlier didn't really give me much of a workout. Shouldn't you be at the academy right now though, Naruto? The old man spoke up with a smile on his face as he cooked the boy's ramen. Irika-sensei is just talking about boring stuff and stuff I already know today. The boy waved it off with a grin as he began to drool slightly in anticipation. Besides, I'm already ready for the exam. If you say so, Naruto, if you say so. The girl nodded simply, before all three blinked slightly as a sudden shout echoed down the street. Naruto, why aren't you in class? The words burst past the lips of an obviously irate Chunin teacher named Irika. You've got final exams tomorrow. Ramen. Naruto drooled softly as the bowl was set down in front of him before blinking slightly as he looked up at Irika. Did you say something, Irika-sensei? Nah, Ruto. Yuzi. You. Maki. The man ground out as he glared down at the boy who happily bowed to the ramen stand owners and began to dig into his ramen. Waff. The boy responded around a mouthful of noodles. Class now, the man bellowed. In a minute, let me finish lunch. Naruto. The warning growl continued. Meh. I'm about to have Anko-chan after my ass, Irika-sensei. The boy said in a casually bored tone as he raised a brow at Irika. Now tell me, what do you think she'd do if I left her a present? Naruto, this is no time to be talking about presents. You need to get to class now. There was a decided tick to the man's eye. Oh, how he tried with the boy, but the kid was stubborn. Do you want to get laughed at again? No, I don't, and Irika-sensei. I think this is the perfect time to be talking about presents for Anko-chan. The boy took a deep slurp of his noodles before grinning down right mischievously at the man. You should know what I leave her as presents to shake her. NAR. The man began before suddenly his eyes widened at the implications of just what the boy was saying. Naruto, you wouldn't. Maidano-sensei. When was the last time you got laid? The boy grinned again at the man. No hint of malice or anger in his eyes. Only an honest playfulness. You know, it's not very healthy to not have an outlet for all those frustrations. And as scary as Anko-chan is, she's very good. I do not want to know how you know that. The man shivered softly before giving the boy a speculative look before shivering again. I seriously do not want to know. Meh. Tell you what, sensei. I'll make you deal. The boy slurped up the last of the ramen, then grinned as he nodded thankfully to the cooks. Thank you for a lovely bowl of ramen. As he placed his money on the counter, he grinned at Irika. Ask Anko-chan out on a date. Treat her right, and I'll go back to class with you. The man merely stared at the boy, his mind momentarily frazzled as he tried to wrap his mind around just what it was he was asking him to do. Let me get this straight. You'll go back to class if I ask Anko Mitarashi out on a date, and treat her right. Yup, he grinned foxily back at the man before giving him a serious look. Hot and dirty sex is good and all, but seriously, she needs a real date for a change. No looking at her like the rest of those perverts. Treat her like a lady. Irika pinched the bridge of his nose as he gave a look down at the boy. What are you, my mother? He sighed softly before he rubbed lightly at his eyes. I can't believe I've got a 12-year-old lecturing at me about sex and relationships. Well, if you want good advice. The boy spoke up helpfully. Ugh, the man sighed softly. Fine. I'll ask her out on a date. A real date, and I'll treat her like the lady she is. The man blushed softly as he grumbled a bit. Not that it's likely she'd be interested. I don't know. What do you think, Anko-chan? The boy grinned as he spoke up helpfully, causing the teacher to immediately freeze in his spot before slowly turning around. Standing there, her tan trench coat fluttering lightly in the wind, stood the woman in question, brown eyes staring back at the man, her head half cocked to the side as she glanced up and down speculatively. Pursing her lips lightly, she casually removed her hands from her pockets and caught her chin between her fingers. Huh. I dunno, brat. Hey, would I steer you wrong? The boy put on a hurt expression as he looked back at the mesh-wearing woman. Irika-sensei is a stand-up guy. Heh. Oh, gonna place your life on the line on that. The woman grinned as she casually ran her fingers up Irika's stomach over his chest as she arched a brow at Naruto. Hell yeah, I am. There wasn't a moment's hesitation as he stood up, firmly looking back defiantly into Anko's eyes. Irika-sensei is one of the people I care about. He cares about me, and he doesn't hate me like most everyone else. He accepts me. The man in question looked back down at Naruto, confusion evident on his face, But more than that, there was a pride in those eyes as a soft little smile curled on his lips, his hand unconsciously going down, gripping lightly on the boy's shoulder. Naruto. The boy flashed a grin at Irika before looking back at Anko. So, how about it, Anko-chan? He picks you up at 7. Um. The woman grinned back at Naruto, looking back at Irika with a new set of eyes. Huh. The brat vouches for you, huh? Hmm. The man stared wildly then, suddenly realizing just what kind of predicament he might just be getting into. Tea tonight. Yup. Tonight. The boy grinned back shamelessly as he smiled even wider at Anko. I'll make sure he's there. I'm sure you will, brat. I'm sure you will. She laughed, ever so softly before pulling her fingers back from where they'd been stroking against Irika's chest. I'll see you then. And do not keep me waiting. All right. The man nodded obediently before the woman turned and vanished in a swirl of leaf. When he finally came out of his stupor as he noticed the triumphant grin on Naruto's face. You planned that, didn't you, Naruto? Nah, not really. The boy shrugged with a grin. Been trying to get Anko a decent date for a while now. All I've been able to do is tie up guys she thinks are cute so she can take them back to her lair and vent her frustrations on him. Naruto. There was a warning edge to the man's tone. Wah, the boy grinned back. They leave with a smile on their face that you couldn't wipe off with a katana. Irika simply sighed before a slight smile came to his lips, and he reached down, ruffling the boy's hair with a slight smile on his lips. Come on, let's get to class. Then you can show me where I can pick up Anko. No problem, Irika-sensei. The boy grinned back at him as he jumped up, his trench coat fluttering softly before he paused a moment. So why do you want me to go to class so badly? As he looked at the boy, scratching the back of his head curiously, the man sighed back at him. Naruto, you failed the Jinin exam twice already. You're at the bottom of the class rankings and you skip class half the time. So, the boy grinned back at the man. I'm too busy training to worry about those boring lectures. He grinned at the tick on Irika's face. Getting chased by a bunch of jounins a lot better workout than what I get in the academy. You've still failed twice, Naruto, the man said sternly. You keep it up and they'll eventually stop letting you try. You do want to be a ninja, don't you? Yeah. Did an old man Hokage tell ya? The boy grinned back at the man. I blew those on purpose. The man almost fell over in shock before he glared at the boy. What? Why would you do something as stupid as that? So I could get on Hinata's team, of course. The boy grinned back at the man as he stretched back, laughing softly before getting a somber look on his face. I promised someone very special to me that I'd protect her. And I will. The man stared at the boy in incomprehension. So, you're saying that you've purposely failed 2 exams just to get on Hinata Hyuga's team, so you can protect her? The man stared at the boy for a long moment. I'm sure whoever you made that promise to would have understood you graduating on time, Naruto. Yes, Sensei would have, the boy said with a quiet nod before he looked up fiercely into Irika's eyes. But I won't. I don't go back on my promises, that's my way. So, you promised your sensei, huh? The man looked at Naruto oddly for a moment. You've never told me who taught you your unique style. The boy gave a safe little smile before he looked at Irika, Hinata's mother. It was in that stunned silence that they walked down the street, a look of comprehension dawning on the man's face as he looked at the boy before him, who seemed such a contradiction at times, bouncing between child and man with an almost carefree ease. At moments, so frighteningly serious and insightful for a boy, and others, so carefree and childish that it seemed as if he'd never had a worry in his life. Come on, Irika-sensei, the boy suddenly spoke up cheerfully. Let's hurry up and get to your lecture. I need a good nap. Why, you little? The man gave a slight glare at his pupil, even as the boy gave off a light laugh and started to race the man back to the academy, as Irika couldn't help but wonder how much had the boy been hiding. Several hours later. Stop slouching. You want to impress Anko-chan or not? Naruto berated his instructor as he crossed his arms about his chest. Come on, straighten up that jacket. You're a chunin for crying out loud. Act like it. Naruto. The man growled softly as he looked down at the boy, his eyes narrowing slightly. The boy grinned at the man before with a sudden poof. he transformed into Anko herself, suddenly leaning in, whispering to him in a soft, slow voice. Come on, Irika-kun. Don't you want to look your best for me? Immediately, Irika's face flushed red as he stared back at the figure, frozen in shock before suddenly, with an impish grin, she was replaced by a chair from a nearby patio of a restaurant. Blinking in shock, he turned his eyes and then looked to see two Narutos waving back at him from the patio where the chair had come from. With a grin on his face, the boy switched with the chair once more before grinning up at the man with an almost giggle. Naruto. The man paused a moment before looking down at the kid. Why did you do that? Because you didn't believe me when I told you I purposely bombed the tests, he grinned softly before stretching out lightly. I can pull off the academy stuff, though. I only have a bit above average chakra control. There was a twinge of frustration that passed his face as he grumbled at that. Stupid chakra reserves. Naruto. What are you talking about? The man blinked down at the boy, not quite sure what to make of what he said. Didn't the old man tell you? I got more chakra than anyone else in this village. The boy blinked a bit before shrugging. Irika merely gave the boy a look. Are you trying to tell me you've got more chakra reserves at 13 than the Hokage himself? That's what I just said, Irika-sensei. The boy grinned a bit. Why do you think I still have such shitty control with all the chakra control exercises I do? The man sighed and merely shook his head as he ruffled the boy's hair with a chuckle. Whatever you say, kid, whatever you say. The boy merely grinned in response before he would stretch back happily. Oh, by the way. The man looked curiously down at the boy. What, Naruto? I like you a lot, Irika-sensei. The boy smiled up at him with his eyes closed, before suddenly they snapped open, those brilliant blue eyes like steel as they're pierced into Irika's gaze. But, Anko-chan's like me. Hurt her, and I'll make you pay. I know, kid. I know. The man ruffled the boy's hair lightly with an accepting nod. Tell you what, we'll go and get some ramen tomorrow after you graduate. Sound good? Yup. The boy grinned before pulling the man over to an apartment building. Come on, we're here. With a smile, the man allowed the boy to drag him along, pulling rapidly into the building before up several waiting flights of stairs. After jerking him down a hall, the boy paused, then gestured to a waiting door. Here we are, Irika-sensei. The man paused a moment, studying the door carefully before slowly straightening up with a nervous sigh. You sure about this, Naruto? Just knock already. Eesh, the boy grumbled as he would cross his arms about his mesh-covered chest. You've got balls, Irika-sensei. Use 'em. Damned brat. The man gave a mock glare down at his student before raising his fist up and giving a slow, simple knock on the door. For a moment, nothing happened, a silence hanging heavy on the air, anticipation gnawing in the man's stomach as he cast a wary glance down at his student, who merely grinned happily back up at him. Finally then, the sound of shifting bolts and locks could be heard, before the door swung slowly inward. The sight that greeted him, however, was one he wasn't quite prepared for. So you actually showed up, huh? There she was, Anko Mitarashi, leaning lightly against the door, her voice somewhat subdued compared to the usual sultry exuberance as she let her eyes flick to Irika's before down to the boy at his side, with the brat no less. Hey, someone's gotta chaperone you too. The boy grinned back at the woman with a wink as he put his hands behind his head. Irika, however, took a moment to collect himself. When he'd asked for a date with the woman, the last thing he'd expected when knocking on her door was this. Almost anything resembling her usual, almost exhibitionist style was gone, replaced by a simple white blouse, trimmed in red, hanging loosely off her shoulders, with a pair of simple matching black pants. She still wore her headband, but as a belt, slung loose across her hips. At his look, the woman merely arched a brow and scowled slightly. What? Got a problem with how I look? The growl in her voice was rapidly approaching what Naruto could tell was the danger zone. Actually, Anko-san, I simply haven't seen you outside of your work clothes before. The man managed a softly sheepish look. Looking as nice as you do makes me feel more than a little underdressed, not to mention out of my league. Her eyes went blank for a moment, her expression gone stone cold as she simply stared back at the man before her head slowly turned down to the suddenly nervous Naruto. For a moment, she merely held him there, frozen by that unreadable gaze before finally, her lips curled back into a slight smile as her eyes warmed. You did good, kid. He has his moments. Iruka agreed as he ruffled the boy's hair before offering Enko his arm. May I have the honor of escorting the beautiful lady to dinner? Yes, he does. The look she gave Naruto held an honest smile before she nodded to Iruka and slipped her arm in his. And yes, you may. She paused a moment before grinning back at the blonde. Go on and take off, kid. I don't think we'll be needing you tonight. Eh, just don't keep him up too late, Enko-chan. He's got to give me my exams in the morning. The boy grinned in response before giving a serious look directly at Enko. And take it slow. No dragging him to your bed tonight. Damned brat. What do you think I am? The woman grumbled as Iruka blushed slightly in response, as he felt her arm tightening lightly against his own before she shook her head with a chuckle. Never mind. Don't answer that question. Smart lady. The boy grinned before he raced towards the window at the end of the hall, opened it, and gave them one last wave before jumping out into the night. I swear, I never know what to expect from that boy. Iruka chuckled slightly. He always keeps me guessing, though. Yeah. A slight smile held to the woman's lips as she nodded, leaning lightly against the teacher. He sure makes life interesting. As well as some very red-faced, for a multitude of reasons, girls. Now to begin. So, I take it last night went well? The words were tinged with humor as a blonde face suddenly appeared in front of the distant look in Iruka's eyes as the man sat quietly behind his desk, watching as the students trickled in, individually and in small groups. The man instantly reacted, jumping back as his hands rose defensively before recognizing the face in front of him. Damn it, Naruto. Wah! The boy grinned softly as he would lean in, that mischievous grin plastered on his features. Ninjas are supposed to be sneaky. You're just letting yourself get distracted. I was not. The man began before sighing softly and giving a mild glare at the boy. Fine. I was distracted, happy? Depends, are you? Naruto grinned back at the man as his eyes danced with mischief. Are you? If you're asking how the date went, why don't you ask Enko? The man responded, as a slow smirk crossed his lips and he crossed his arms about his chest. Oh, I did. The look suddenly became flinty, cold as the boy looked down at him. Which is why I'm going to do what I am. Instantly the man froze in his seat, staring back at Naruto with wide, worried eyes as he couldn't help but feel a trickle of fear run down the back of his neck. We had a good time. We had dinner, saw a movie, went for a walk. He threw his hands up. She was smiling the whole way back to her apartment. She even gave me a kiss. Oh, so, you're saying you enjoyed your date with Enko-chan? The boy's voice responded, as if in a tone of disbelief. Yes, I'm saying that I enjoyed my date with Enko-chan. The man shot back rather loudly, before a sinking pit shot through his stomach as he realized just what it was he'd said so loudly. Really, Iruka-sensei, the boy admonished with that wicked grin suddenly back on his face. You don't have to yell it that loudly, though. I'm sure that everyone's happy to know you've found yourself a girlfriend. Meanwhile, Iruka's silver-haired fellow teacher Mizuki was staring back at Iruka. Enko-chan. The man blinked a moment before his eyes widened. As in Enko Mitarashi? You went on a date with Enko Mitarashi. Iruka gave a flat look back at his co-worker before sighing softly as he heard the rising snickers erupted from the class in front of them both. Yes, I went on a date with a lovely kunoichi last night. We had a good time, and I think we'll be doing it again soon. Something wrong with that? The last of it directed towards the class in a hard, flat look, while Mizuki couldn't help but continue. But, Enko Mitarashi. The Enko Mitarashi. I don't know of any other Enko Mitarashi that are kunoichi, Mizuki-sensei. Naruto offered helpfully before grinning at Iruka. Do you, Iruka-sensei? No, Naruto, I don't. The dark-haired teacher responded before he leveled a look at Mizuki. Would you be implying that there's something wrong with my dating a lovely kunoichi like Enko Mizuki? Well, the man paused, still wide-eyed before he continued. It's Enko Mitarashi. And the word came in simultaneous, matching cold tones and icy stares from both Irika and Naruto, as Mizuki could feel a line of sweat slowly trickling down the back of his neck. Air. Instantly the man seemed to shrink down on himself under the sudden spikes of killing intent washing off the two. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Good. Again the replies were simultaneous as the pair looked at him once more with those frosty glares before turning back to one another. Now, Naruto, if you would be so kind as to take your seat. The man spoke in a calmer tone of voice. We do have the exams today if you'll remember. Yup, whatever you say, Irika-sensei. Naruto grinned back before almost dancing up the steps to flop down into a seat next to the pale-eyed, dark-haired Hinata Hyuga. Hey, Hinata-chan, ready for the exam? The girl blushed softly in response before slowly nodding, her fingers lightly pushing together, as she asked in a quiet voice, How about you, Naruto-kun? Pretty good, though, a little twitchy, he grinned softly. Didn't get my morning chase in, though. He pouted slightly at that as he would stretch slowly. The girl paused a moment, lightly biting down against her lower lip before blushing again. You shouldn't torment them so much, Naruto-kun. It's not nice. Hey, I'm just helping to keep them on their toes, he grinned back, waggling a brow at her. After all, if a 13-year-old academy student can pull things like that on them. Well, she blushed softly before giving a faint, reluctant nod of the head as she lightly twiddled her fingers once more. All right, Naruto-kun. Oh, by the way, his voice took on a casual, conversational tone as he turned his eyes towards the front of the class. I want my book back. The soft blush on her face instantly exploded into a full crimson as she shuffled nervously in her chair. Her first attempts at words came out as nothing more than a mousy squeak before she managed to stutter out, BB book, Naruto-kun? Hinata-chan. The words were soft but stern as he held his hand up to her expectantly. Still caught in a hot, full-body blush, the girl rummaged around in her oversized coated, then reluctantly handed over a small blue book. The look on her face went beyond sheepish as she gave him a small, hesitant little smile. Sorry. It's all right, Hinata-chan. He smiled back at her now as he brought the book over to him. Just ask next time. That book was supposed to go to the old man. He paused a moment, before grinning as he leaned in, whispering lightly into her ear. Do I need to be worried about you reading this with sticky fingers, Hinata-chan? The girl seemed to grow even redder if it was possible, shrinking down into her jacket, as if trying to make herself completely invisible as she refused to look him in the eyes. When she didn't say anything, he sighed softly and shook his head as he lightly reached behind her and rubbed her back. Calm down, Hinata-chan. I'm just teasing you. He paused a moment before grinning softly. Though, I wonder how much an autographed, Hyuga-flavored book would sell for. The girl couldn't help but let out a soft, strangled whimper as she finally looked at him, pleadingly over the top of her jacket, her wide eyes almost filled with tears as they stared pleadingly at him. Her breaths came heavy and labored as he watched her. Before gently, he kept stroking her back. Easy, Hinata-chan, easy. He sighed, just a bit before looking down into her eyes. One of these days we're going to get you over all that. Gently he reached up and began to stroke her hair soothingly as he waited for her to calm down while he carefully used his other hand to put his book away. After a few moments, when her labored breaths finally slowed down, he looked at her again. Better? She nodded quickly, blushing still before she managed a stuttering. Sorry, Naruto-kun. You're getting better. He offered her a grin as he would keep stroking her hair until she fully extracted herself from her jacket. When his fingers pulled away, earning a slight, yearning whimper from the girl as she looked at him like a begging puppy. I swear, Hinata-chan, you're worse than Akamaru about getting petted. The girl's only response with a pleading little whimper, as those puppy dog eyes returned in full force as she looked pleadingly at him. With a resigned sigh, he reached up and once more began to stroke his fingers through her hair, earning a contented sigh as she leaned over against him. Thank you, Naruto-kun. Yeah, you're just trying to ruin my hard-earned reputation. He grinned softly as he would lightly caress his finger a finger just behind her ear. Though, I will admit, you do make quite the cute pet. The blush instantly returned in full force, though She giggled softly, a small trickle of blood running down from underneath her nose, veins throbbing around her eyes. Coughing softly into his free hand, he spoke, "If you don't stop staring under my pants, Hinata-chan, I'm gonna stop." The girl giggled softly, her eyes distant and only half focused as she lightly licked her drying lips as she would grin in response, getting an eyeful before she would finally deactivate her eyes. You're such a pervert, Hinata-chan. The blonde boy sighed softly as he looked at her before casually continuing to stroke through her hair as she reddened. And what does that M make you, then Naruto-kun? She reddened for a moment before grinning shyly back at him. Damned good. He winked and laughed as she blushed again, then nodded quietly as they simply sat there, waiting for class to start, or at least trying to. Will you two knock it off? There was an angry growl rumbling past the lips of a pink-haired Sakura Haruno as she whipped her head around and glared at the two. Go be perverted somewhere else. Sorry, Haruno. Naruto smirked softly. No can do. We're here to graduate. Huh? You mean like the last 2 times you tried, dead last? She glared at him. Like you could pass. Seeing the look of irritation that grew on Hinata's face as she stiffened beneath his fingers, the boy decided to simply nip the problem in the bud. Don't mind Haruno, Hinata-chan. He grinned as he spoke to her in a stage whisper. She's still pissed that her precious Sasuke-kun is more interested in what's in my pants than wants in hers. There was an unintelligible shriek of rage that erupted past the girl's lips as Sakura almost threw herself at the boy in an attempt to beat his skull into a bloody paste. She got as far as getting to her feet before a voice shouted out back at her, Sakura, sit down and calm down. No fighting in class outside of designated combat. But Irika-sensei, the girl began, he started it. Sakura. Irika just gave her a look. He was talking to Hinata. At no point in time did he address you or say anything to you until after you spoke to him. If you can't control yourself enough to keep from exploding in class just because of what's said, how can you hope to control yourself during a mission? The girl blushed slightly before looking down, fidgeting lightly where she sat before falling silent. Yeesh, forehead, a blonde-haired girl sitting a few seats away called out, her blue eyes sparkling with a bit of sadistic amusement. You keep acting this way, and Sasuke-kun will be all mine before you know it. Ino pig. The girl growled back in response as she glared warningly back at the girl. Both of you shut up already. The words were cold as they shot out of the mouth of a black-haired, black-eyed boy who never even bothered to look at them as he spoke. I have no interest in either of you. The pair startled as they heard the words come from Sasuke Uchiha's lips before both stared at him with wide eyes and open mouths. With nothing coming past their lips, the boy simply sat there, chin resting against his propped-up hands, waiting patiently for class to finally start. All the while, he simply ignored the hurt, confused looks the girls gave him as they seemed at a loss for what to say. I was wondering how long it was going to take him to crack, Naruto murmured as he kept stroking his fingers through Hinata's hair. Tisk, you're troublesome. You know that, Naruto, a boy with a black spiky ponytail grumbled in the seat next to the blonde. And you're lazy, Shikamaru, your point? The boy grinned back as he lounged in his chair himself. Just pointing it out, the boy responded with a yawn. So, passing this time? That's the plan. The boy grinned softly before looking at where Hinata was snuggling against his arm. At least, as long as Hinata-chan lets me actually get out of my seat. Tisk, you're both troublesome, the boy responded before smirking slightly. Though, at least you're amusing. So glad you approve, Naruto chuckled back, ignoring the pouting glare that Hinata shot towards the other boy. Naruto-kun. There was a syrupy sweetness to the girl's tone as she smiled up at the blue-eyed boy. Don't you think Shikamaru would make an amusing practice dummy? She turned her head and locked her pale eyes onto the other boy. He's certainly troublesome enough. There was a blink, then another as the dark-haired boy gave a blank stare back at Hinata before looking at Naruto. Tisk, very troublesome. Don't look at me. You brought it on yourself. The boy grinned in response. Tisk, troublesome. There was a sigh before the boy again just left his head resting on the desk. All right, class. There was a brief pause in his voice as Irika stood up, looking across the classroom. It's time to begin the graduation exam. He paused a moment as he held up a list of names. To graduation, you'll need to perform the clone technique when you're called to the next room. And so, it went, each person entering the room one by one. Hinata and Shikamaru had both already gone when it finally came down to Naruto's turn. A slight grin on his face, the boy wandered into the room and stood in front of one of his instructors. Shifting slightly, he stretched back, his head cupping the back of his neck before he spoke up. "Oi, whenever you're ready." "Hey, where's Irika?" He was called away. The silver-haired man responded with an easy smile. "I'll be proctoring your exam on your own. How about you show us your clone technique?" "Whatever you say," the boy grinned, making the appropriate hand signs before suddenly there was a poof of smoke, and 10 Narutos stood around the boy. "That good enough?" "Looks that way." The man nodded before he gave the boy a grin. "Looks like you're ready to take the real academy graduation test." "Huh." The boy blinked slowly as he looked at the man, cocking his head lightly to the side. "What do you mean the real test?" "Mizuki-sensei, I never heard anything about this." "You're training to be a ninja Naruto," the man grinned back at him. "You just have to perform a task set out specifically for you. Are you ready?" "Sure, bring it on." The boy responded, smirking softly. "You're not going to stop me from graduating this time." "All right then," the man grinned in response. "Your task is," several hours later. "Irika." The man in question blinked as he looked up from where he was seated across from Anko in the dango shop. As he looked up to see a worried-looking Mizuki calling out to him. "We have to get to Hokusamas. Naruto has taken the scroll of the Forbidden Seal as a prank." "What?" Both Irika and Anko shouted, even as Mizuki was already on his way out, running, leaving the pair to glance at one another with a worried look. "That doesn't sound like the brat." Anko spoke up, a tinge of worry in her voice. "Something's wrong about this." "Yeah, you're right. But we better get to the Hokage's mansion and see what's going on." Irika responded with a nod. "Let's go." It only took the pair a few moments to reach their destination, where they found the old man standing, a frown on his lips as he addressed the crowd. Yes, the scroll, forbidden by the previous Hokage, was removed from the mansion earlier today. If used in a certain way, it could cause extreme danger. The man paused a moment before taking a deep puff from his pipe. "It's already been half a day since the scroll was taken. We must hurry and find Naruto." "Damn it, what the hell is going on?" Irika narrowed his eyes as he growled back to Anko. "Something isn't right about this. I'm gonna head to the cabin in the forest, start west from there, and work your way towards me. Hopefully we'll find him somewhere between us." "Right." The woman responded with a nod, noting the worried look in Irika's eyes. "We'll find the brat, don't worry." "I hope so." The man paused, giving the woman a nod before they separated, each racing off in their own direction to try and find the boy. "What's going on, Naruto?" In the forest a short time later. "There you are." Irika let off a relieved sigh as he came across a dirted and scuffed-up Naruto, grinning back at him with the scroll strapped against his back. "Hey, Irika-sensei." The boy merely grinned back as he stretched lightly. "I guess I passed, huh?" "What the hell were you thinking? Stealing a forbidden scroll?" The man growled in response as he glared back at him. "What are you talking about passing? All you had to do to pass was perform a clone technique." "Huh." Naruto blinked this time, a look of uncertainty flashing across those blue eyes. "But Mizuki-sensei said I had to do this as the last test. Sneak this scroll, learn a technique from it, and show you it." Before Irika could respond, he noticed a sudden flurry of kunai racing towards him. Acting on pure instinct, the man roughly shoved his palm against Naruto's chest, pushing the boy out of the way as the storm of knives slammed into him. Grunting softly in the pain from the impact of those multiple blades, Irika uncrossed his arms and looked up to find Mizuki smirking down at him from a tree. "So, I see you found the moron." The man smirked before looking over towards Naruto. "Naruto, give me the scroll." "What the hell's going on here?" The boy growled as he looked from the bleeding Irika to the smug-looking Mizuki. "Why the hell are you attacking Irika-sensei?" "Naruto," Irika yelled as he pulled a bloody kunai from his body. "Whatever happens, don't give him that scroll. He used you to get his hands on it." It contains a dangerous, forbidden technique. There's really no point in you having it, Naruto. The silver-haired man smirked as he looked down at the boy. I'll tell you the truth about why everyone in this village hates you. No, don't. Iruka lurched forward, anger burning in his eyes. Don't you dare break that law, Mizuki. What law? What are you talking about? Naruto spoke up, confusion evident in his eyes. You know about how the nine-tailed fox attacked this village 13 years ago, don't you, Naruto? The man spoke up, grinning wickedly at the boy. The day the fourth died. The day Iruka's parents were killed. The day a law was placed down on the village to prevent anyone from revealing the truth of what happened that day. Mizuki, Iruka growled out. The nine-tails died. The fourth killed it. Everyone knows that. Naruto snapped back defiantly even as he could feel a growing pit of ice spreading through his stomach. Oh no. Mizuki laughed at that. The law, the rule, that everyone's afraid to break, is that the nine-tails didn't die. You are the nine-tails, and the technique on that scroll was used to seal you up. What? The boy blinked a bit at that, before canting his head at Mizuki. That doesn't make sense. The silver-haired man almost dropped the oversized shuriken he'd whipped out at the boy's calm response. That's why everyone in the village hates you. That's why they shun you. Even Iruka hates you. No, he doesn't. Again the boy spoke up, a pit of anger in his stomach before he shook his head and looked up defiantly at Mizuki. You can say all the crap you want, but that doesn't make it true. You say everyone hates me? Bullshit. Anger was burning in those brilliant blue eyes now as he growled towards the man. If that was true, I wouldn't have had my friends. I wouldn't have had my sensei. I wouldn't have had the precious moments I cherish. If I was that demon, I wouldn't care for this village or want to protect the people in it. He unslung the scroll from his shoulders and put his palm on it, his eyes dark and warning as his coat fluttered lightly in the night breeze. I am Naruto Uzumaki, a shinobi of the leaf and practitioner of Bondage Style. The blonde suddenly let loose a brilliant flare of chakra before a pair of knotted ropes slid down the sleeves of his jacket and into his hands. And I won't let you take what you want, traitor. Yeah, so the demon has some claws after all, huh? The man smirked as he grinned wickedly down at the boy. Well, I'll just have to carve them out before I kill you and run off with that scroll. Naruto, run. Iruka screamed out at the boy as the kid shifted into a loose stance. Take the scroll and run. Sorry, Iruka-sensei, but Enko-chan would kill me if I let you get any more hurt than you already are. The boy responded, so. Yeah, just shut up and die, already demon. Mizuki screamed as he would launch the massive, spinning star in his hand, directly at Naruto. In a flash the boy was rolling out of the way, as one of his ropes snaked out, the knotted length striking atop the spinning projectile to knock it to slam into the earth far short of where it was originally intended to hit. Nay, gonna have to do better than that, you piece of shit. The boy stuck his tongue out at the reddening man, as he would continue to spin the ropes about in his hands. Yeah, you think that pathetic style's going to stop me? Mizuki responded as he started to jump down from his tree, only to find himself caught in the path of a bloody kunai embedding itself deep into his arm. Forgetting about me already, Mizuki? Iruka smirked lithely with a slight cough. I'm not dead yet. Bah, the man snarled as he landed on his feet, roughly pulling the blade out with a smirk. A wounded chunin and a not even jinin? This won't take long. And how about with a jounin added to the mix? A cold feminine voice spoke up as a figure stood on a tree above him, her brown eyes smoldering coldly as she glared the man. Or better yet, how about we make that a pissed-off jounin bitch whose boyfriend is bleeding because of you? As Mizuki took his eyes off of Naruto to focus on the newly arrived threat of Anko, he suddenly found one rope snapping out, its rough, knotted length wrapping about his throat as the other lashed against the top of his thigh, just barely enough to propel a knot directly into the man's crotch. As the man began to kneel over, half squealing in pain as he seemed unable to make a choice between struggling against the rope at his throat and the pain between his legs, Naruto struck. What did you call pathetic, Mizuki-chan? The boy hissed angrily before he started to run, directly at the man's body. Halfway there, he again grasped onto the rope, yanking hard on the one attached to the silver-haired man's throat, jerking it back to send his body directly into the path of the boy's launched need, as it impacted savagely against the side of his face. For a moment, all he knew was the shock of that impact, before another struck, two boots, nailing into his stomach as Anko had dropped like a missile directly into the man's body, throwing him off balance again. The earth was a cold, harsh impact, giving nothing of comfort or care as it did not embrace him, choosing to rebuke him in an uncaring manner as his body battered against it. As he struggled to breath, struggled to scream, he felt the dull thuds, before his knees exploded into pain as Irika drove a kunai into each joint. As the woman stepped off the man's beaten body. So, I'm going to take it that he's the reason the brat grabbed the scroll. Anko asked curiously over the moaning Mizuki before she sauntered over to Irika and gave him a casual look. You know, red doesn't really suit you, Irika. The man managed a short laugh before he shook his head. If the occasion's right, I don't mind. Better me than Naruto. Oh, I see. Then woman turned her attention towards the nervous-looking blonde. And what do you have to say about that, blondie? So, what's this about me and demon foxes? The boy responded with a nervous grin. The woman paused a moment. Before just glaring venomously down at Mizuki, he didn't. He did, Irika responded solemnly. Well, brat, sounds like we've got some explanations to go through with you. The woman responded with a sigh. Should give us something to do while we wait for the lazy ANBU to arrive. Know how people use scrolls to seal kunai and stuff and things. The boy merely gave her a slightly vexed look as he pulled off his coat and turned it inside out, showing her the array of seals built into the fabric. The what does it look like glint in his eyes made the woman feel more than a little sheepish as she nodded and continued. All right, moving on. Basically your scroll that's got the seal and the nine tails in the kunai, except he can't get out. I see. The boy shrugged slightly. I always wondered what the seal on my stomach was for. I just figured it helped make room for all that delicious ramen. I wonder about you sometimes, brat. I really do. The woman chuckled softly as she gave the boy a look. So, where's your headband? Irika coughed softly into his hand. It would seem Mizuki misled about what all he had to do to earn his headband. And I would have gotten away with it, if it wasn't for you damned bastards and your bitch, the man snarled before taking 3 simultaneous kicks to the head. Damned idiot, doesn't know when to quit, does he? Naruto grumbled softly. Hey Naruto, come over here and close your eyes. The man grinned softly at the boy. I've got something to give you. Huh? What? There was a curious note to the boy's words as he turned his head slightly but complied, stepping forward, then closing his eyes in front of the man. What's that, Irika-sensei? He felt something shifting about on his forehead and pulling tight at his head, before he could hear Irika speaking up. All right, Naruto, go ahead and open your eyes. Huh? The boy blinked as he looked up at the smiling faces of Anko and the now headbandless Irika. Congratulations on graduating, Naruto. The man smiled as he lightly patted the boy on the shoulder. We'll go get some ramen later, all right? Only if we pick up some dango on the way. Anko piped up. Damned bastard ruined my dango fix. Again she glared down at the still subdued Mizuki before crossing her arms about her chest and pouting. Sure thing, Anko-chan. The two responded quickly enough, before sighing as they waited for the ANBU to finally arrive. So, want to see who can make him scream the loudest? Anko suggested innocently enough. Then and there Mizuki knew, tonight was going to be a long, painful night. Even discounting the rounds he'd have to endure with Ibiki, getting caught by Anko with able cohorts was never, ever a good thing. Several hours later. You can come in, Naruto. The old man sighed softly as he gave a slight roll of his eyes, even as a soft little smile graced his lips. The boy grinned softly as he would lightly slip into perch on the windowsill. Sorry about earlier, old man. It's all right. The Hokage waved it off with a slight smile as he took a puff from his pipe. You've had quite the eventful evening. The boy sighed softly as he dropped down into the room before taking a seat against the wall, just beneath the window. Yeah, I really screwed up, huh? Somewhat. the man responded as he pulled a chair over near the boy and took a seat. You could have gotten confirmation from Irika, and you should have noticed it was odd that you only had one proctor for your exam instead of the two you were supposed to, but it's not too unexpected of a thing. The man paused, taking a slow, deep puff from his pipe before continuing. Of course, at the same time you were given a mission as a part of a graduation test. A reasonable addition, and one I have to say, we might actually be adding into the graduation exam in the near future. A mission that you succeeded in, I should also say. Eh, I'm a ninja, it's what I do, the boy responded with a negligent wave of his hand. No big. Naruto, you broke into a Kage's mansion and made off with an extremely dangerous and important scroll, the man said with a firm look and another puff of his pipe. And you would have gotten away with it if you hadn't been told simply to learn a technique from the scroll and report to Irika. It was very impressive. I still messed up, the boy responded quietly. I should have known better. I see. The man paused a moment before looking at the boy. So, did you manage to learn something from the scroll? Yeah, shadow clones. The boy responded with a shrug. Interesting and scary for a guy like me to have, huh? Oh, and what do you mean by a guy like you, Naruto? The man asked curiously. Huge chakra reserves? Close combat preference. Naruto paused a moment, before reluctantly continuing. Stuck with a demon in my belly? I had heard Mizuki let that slip, the man said slowly as he took another slow puff of his pipe. Did Sensei know about it? He asked reluctantly as he looked up at the man. Of course she did. The old man responded with a smile and a nod. She knew that you weren't the demon. She saw you for who you are, Naruto. She wasn't lying when she told me she knew my parents, was she? The boy spoke softly, looking up quietly at the old man who could help but flinch back against the eyes that looked so much like his father's. No, she wasn't. The words were soft, rasping past his lips as he suddenly felt a heavy weariness fall on his shoulders. Your parents were both very, very powerful shinobi, Naruto. You need to understand this. They made enemies that to this day would kill you just for being their child. In other words, you're not going to tell me anything about them or who they were. There was a soft glare in Naruto's eyes as he looked up at the man who'd been like his grandfather his entire life, coupled with no small amount of hurt. For a moment, Hiruzen Sarutobi fully felt the weight of his years on his shoulders as he would slowly, quietly force his head to nod in agreement, despite the screaming demands of his heart. I want a Naruto, I really do. Every time I look at you, I can see so much of your father in you, and I want to tell you what kind of man he was, the things he did, who he was, how proud he would be of you. If you say so, the boy sighed a bit as he leaned his head back, resting it against the wall, the frustration almost tangible in the air as he would close his eyes. She was going to tell me about them, when I was older, when I got stronger. It's not knowing. Would things have been different? The third Hokage, the professor, the god of shinobi, paused at the boy's words, a thickness in his throat he could barely force his words through as he looked down into the boy's eyes. In what way, Naruto? Would they have loved me, or would they have pushed me away like most everyone else? The guilt on his words made the air thick, heavy as it wrapped around him. He knew that parents were supposed to accept and love their children unconditionally, that they were supposed to care for them no matter what. But, at the same time, he couldn't help but wonder. The old man lowered himself to his knees then, quietly and wordlessly wrapping the boy in his arms and pulling him to his chest, as he could feel the hot tears beginning to run down the boy's cheeks and down his own. For a moment, he couldn't bring himself to speak, couldn't bring himself to say much of anything at all before finally, he somehow found the strength to speak. They loved you, Naruto. Do not doubt that, ever. The look in your father's eyes when he first held you, the look in your mother's. He pulled back then and looked fiercely down into Naruto's eyes. They loved you, Naruto. Never, ever doubt that. They couldn't push you away. You were a part of them, and I know that they're proud of the man you're becoming. Slowly, the boy nodded his head, a soft look of gratitude on his features as he gave the old man a tight, squeezing hug before pulling back, offering a slight smile on his lips as he carefully rubbed the tears from his eyes. Thanks, old man. It's all right, Naruto, He gently ran his fingers through the boy's hair before lightly patting him on his back. Go on and get some sleep. You've got to get your ID taken tomorrow and meet your team, remember? Yeah, I know. He stood up, moving himself into the window before looking back at the old man. You will tell me about my parents one day, old man. Just make sure you don't die and leave me with nothing. And with that, in a flutter of his trench coat, Naruto Uzumaki slipped out into the night, leaving behind a man who could feel nothing but the press of time and the weight of the burden the boy had left him as he whispered into the night. I know, Naruto. You deserve to know about them both, without having to live in the shadows of their legend. Quietly, the man shut the window, then settled down at his desk, brush and ink in hand as he began to write. This was one thing he would not let Naruto down on. On this one thing, he would make certain not even death would stop him. Someday, he would know who his parents were and what he came from. I expected something more. Sarutobi paused a moment as he looked over the picture ID he held in his hands. Extravagant. What? The blond boy grinned ever so innocently back at the Hokage. You should know by now. I live to defy expectations. Unpredictability is one of a ninja's greatest strengths after all. True enough, the old man chuckled in return. And you do love to live up to that, don't you, Naruto? Who, me? There was an almost cherubic innocence in the boy's eyes as he smiled back at the man. So, team assignments are tomorrow? As the man glanced over the serious-looking Naruto and the photograph in his hand, he tried to reconcile it with the almost bouncing bundle of energy seated in front of him. An amusing consideration was quickly filed away in the back of his mind. Whatever it would have been that he asked next was quickly thrust aside as the door to the room was thrown open with a shout. Defend yourself, old Hey. The small form of a dark-haired boy rocketed face first toward the floor in front of the Hokage. He suddenly found himself hogtied in midair before being slammed down onto the hardwood floor, a foot planted firmly on his back. So, been stealing candy from the kiddies again, old man. Naruto sent a teasing smirk towards Sarutobi as he stood over the bound boy. Didn't you learn the last time? The old man was caught between a chuckle and a sigh. My grandson, Konohamaru. Honored grandson. There was a momentary, shrill shriek as a sunglasses-wearing man jumped into the hallway outside the door, jabbing his finger in Naruto's direction. Unhand him, you monster. Yeah, let me go, the boy demanded. You might have gotten lucky with this trap, but ow. Naruto pulled his hand back from where he'd smacked the boy's head. Shut up, you idiot. Those suddenly hard eyes turned onto the pointing man. And who the hell are you calling a monster, you moron? I am the elite tutor of the honored grandson of our Hokage, the man declared proudly as he suddenly stood almost at attention. Now let him go. Naruto just gave the man a look before he rapped the bound boy on the head once more. Listen up, you dumb punk. The blue-eyed boy completely ignored the look of shocked outrage that showed up on the tutor's face as he addressed the boy again. Do you have any idea how stupid that was? Jumping out of a door, threatening the leader of our village without warning. You trying to get yourself killed. The boy paused a moment before turning and glaring at the man. And you, he declared, pointing a finger directly at the man's face. What kind of elite tutor treats their student like that? Naruto removed his foot from the boy's back before he practically stomped over to the man. You trying to turn him into a spoiled brat that'll get himself killed in his first year. Air. The man was suddenly at a loss for words at the dressing down he was getting from a 13-year-old boy. I mean, that is... Don't think you're getting out of this, old man. The fingers suddenly jerked over, moving away from the aghast tutor to jab in the Hokage's direction. What the hell have you been putting in that pipe of yours to let a brown-nosing moron like this dumbass train your grandson? The Hokage actually looked slightly mollified as he ducked his head slightly, his hat coming down to cover his eyes in a half-mumble. It was actually the council's idea. You're the Hokage, Naruto growled. You know better than anyone that a spoiled brat has no place in the life of a shinobi. So, unless you want to outlive your grandson, either have that guy take his head out of his ass, or get someone else to train the kid. Grumbling still, he gave the group a snort, before turning and walking out of the room, waving his hand casually. I'm gonna go blow off some steam. Should I alert the ANBU? The old man called back wearily. Nah, I'll make sure they know. A cold shiver of fear ran down the old man's neck as he couldn't help but shake his head. I really wish he wouldn't put it that way. Hokage-sama. The man instantly stood up rigidly. I will immediately discipline that fool for his insolence. Ebisu, the old man spoke up simply and casually. I would suggest, for your own sake, that you attempt no such thing. For a moment, the old man's eyes flickered to where his grandson was squirming his way out of the loosening bonds he was bound in, before suddenly slipping out of the room, no doubt in pursuit of Naruto. The betting pool frowns on outsiders trying to get in on the action. The betting pool. The old man nodded with a casual slant of his head. Yes, the betting pool. Who his next prank will be on, how long the chase will last, if he's actually caught or not. Various other things, down to specific people being singled out. But he insulted you, Hokage-sama. He insulted your grandson. He insulted me. There was another brief return on that shrill tone to his words as he spoke up angrily. He told the truth. The old man gave an annoyed glance at the tutor. And given my grandson's actions, I'm beginning to wonder about what kind of future he'd have if left in your care. But Hokage-sama, the council, the man sputtered. Ebisu, there are no shortcuts to becoming Hokage. The old man spoke softly before he turned and looked the man hard in the eyes. And from what I've seen, my grandson only seems to be finding himself at greater distance from that goal than closer. I would suggest you seriously reevaluate your teaching approach. But, Hokage-sama, I'm well known as a prominent tutor to future Hokage candidates, the man argued back. And yet, here I am, still Hokage, the man responded simple, which begs the question on just who's calling you such a prominent tutor, now doesn't it? As the man shuffled some papers around on his desk, he looked about a moment before observing. I see that my grandson has managed to escape his bonds and made a run for it. You might want to hurry up and find him, Ebisu. The man blinked a moment before groaning out loud. Not again. And with that he was off, searching for the boy. After a moment of tranquil calm, a sudden eruption of shouts and screams was heard in the distance. Taking a long, drawn-out puff from his pipe, the man flipped open a small back book to check over some numbers. Ah, I see. Umbu. Today? That sounded like either paint or cream screams. Too loud to be smoke screams, and not outraged enough to be underwear screams. The man paused a moment, a slight trickle of blood beading at his nose as he imagined the last time the boy had purloined kunoichi underwear. Ah, good times. But looks like Inoichi won this round. The old man couldn't help but grin wickedly. Oh, what the hell? Might as well. And with that he went back to the final team rosters and began a slow, wicked chuckle, his eyes gleaming with delight. This should definitely prove interesting. Besides, the boy earned a nice present. Ha ha ha. As the man grinned in delight at his plot, outside, a far different scene was taking place. A swarm of ANBU had assembled, their bodies and uniforms dripping with thick pink foam as they raced after a single figure. A single, cackling figure who raced and bounced across the rooftops, leading his pursuers on a merry chase. Come on, come on. He laughed back at the angry group as they raced after him. Are you guys ANBU or Genin? When I get my hands on you. One of the lead ninjas growled as he raced towards the boy. Yeah. The boy chuckled softly as he would duck around into an alley, bouncing from side to side as the ninjas raced to catch him. If you get your hands on me. He raced along the side of a building then, running from wall to wall, leading them in a circle as he wickedly smiled as he saw he was coming up on the back of the pack. Racing just behind the last person, he asked in a casual, cheerful tone, So, who we chasing? The damned Uzumaki brat. Again, the man panted back, not even bothering to look back at the boy. Oh, what did he do this time? Naruto asked back, grinning wickedly as he held back a snicker. Explosion of pink foam in the ANBU headquarters. It's gonna take forever to get the color out, the man groused. I don't know, Konoha's pink guard does have a nice ring to it. The boy said mischievously. What the hell are you? The man finally threw his head back over his shoulder to see the target right behind him, leading the front of the pack right at him. You. Me. He grinned happily as he waved back at the man, before dashing forward, beginning to make his way through the pack, slapping a tag here and there to an occasional side or back before they realized what was happening, and he darted off to the side, laughing as he raced down the street. Come on, come on. Hurry up, or you'll never catch me. He grinned, jumping from a rooftop as he twirled his body around for a moment, facing them all as he made a sign, priming and detonating the tags he'd slapped through the middle of the group. Immediately blasts of glue and feathers exploded from alternating tags, sticking to various members of the mini-mob, as only those at the outer edges were spared the full wrath. Those in the middle, however, earned the ANBU a new nickname as they raced down the street after the boy, though very few would call one of the elite ninjas a feather duster to their face. Finally, after several fruitless hours of chase, tempers finally cool, and with a resigned frustration, the ANBU reluctantly broke off what had for the last hour been a desperate manhunt after the boy had evaded the group, and they'd lost his trail. When they did finally return to their headquarters, resigned to the task of cleaning up after yet another infamous Uzumaki prank, they quite the surprise. The place had been cleaned spotless, with a number of bowls of ramen laid out on one table, and various bottles of solvent for the glue on their uniforms. It might have been enough to placate them and reduce their ire to a resigned amusement. It might have even left them half interested in what he'd do the next time he pulled something like this. Of course, all that was thrown out the window the minute they started to read through the pages titled Performance Review the boy had somehow managed to write up. 13-year-olds are rarely known for their tact. Naruto Uzumaki was known for being particularly blunt and unapologetic. Reading a 15-page report detailing a lackluster response time, speed, conditioning, alertness, and other factors on its own was aggravation enough. Being called an out-of-shape, unaware, feather duster didn't happen to sit too well with one of the captains, nor did the fact that there was a note letting them know that the Hokage had already received his own copy of said report. There were many more screams of rage that day, though some of the newer members took a perverse glee in seeing themselves marked for more outstanding moments when they'd nearly captured the boy or hadn't been fooled like the rest by some of his tricks. In his office, the Hokage chuckled softly as he read through the pages of Naruto's review. Just before a trio of ANBU burst into his office, the lead one suddenly freezing in his tracks as he caught sight of the document already in the man's hands. Hello there, gentlemen. I was just about to start a little bit of reading, he smiled innocently. Is there something I can help you with? Yes, Hokage-sama. One of the men spoke up quickly. We need you to come to YinBU headquarters right away. Oh, has something happened? The man was lightly puffing at his pipe, schooling his features to neutrality as he blinked at the men. Yes, it was Uzumaki. Another of the men spoke up quickly. What did he do this time? Sarutobi sighed as he seemed to be putting the review down. You have to see for yourself, sir, finished the third. Would it have anything to do with this lovely little review he wrote up for me? The man casually flipped through the pages, where several of the ANBU following him managed to, and I quote, have their heads so far up their asses, he was able to tag a third of them without them even realizing what was going on, while running through the middle of a group of you, and then broke free to remotely detonate several glue and feather tags. The three winced and hung their heads before quietly nodding, as one of them finally spoke up in resignation. Yes, sir. Quite the review a Jinin has managed to put together about the current condition of our ANBU forces, wouldn't you say? Again, all three winced at once, before giving slow, weak nods. Well then, since he bought you dinner, and left solvent for the glue, after cleaning up the mess he made in your headquarters, I think I'll let things go for now, the old man said simply as he took a slow, deep puff on his pipe. But Hokage-sama, you can't just let him get away with this. One of the men spoke up fervently. Sarutobi only arched a brow in response as he simply gave the man a look. Apparently, you misunderstand what I'm saying. He paused a moment before taking a deep puff from his pipe before continuing. I'm going to let it go, that a 13-year-old recent academy graduate managed to prank not only ANBU headquarters, but a group of ANBU themselves, and not only not get caught, but was able to in turn return back to that headquarters without being seen to clean up the mess he made, write up this lovely review, and buy you dinner. All three men paled underneath their masks, a decided lump in their throats as they heard their leader continue. But I do expect the next performance review to be far more impressive. Am I clear? The next one, sir. One of the men squeaked fearfully. Oh yes, the next one. There was an amused glint in the man's eyes. And you're all dismissed, gentlemen. Enjoy your ramen. The three men all grumbled softly with a nod, before closing the door behind them, just in time for the Hokage to allow himself to burst in a wide grin as he allowed himself a soft chuckle. "Oh, Naruto, what would I do without you?" Grinning softly, he made sure to set aside a proper B-class mission payment for the boys' little impromptu review. It had proven to be quite illuminating, both to himself and the ANBU forces. He had a feeling the newly dubbed Feather Dusters wouldn't be forgetting anytime soon. Early the next morning, a loud rapping knock woke the sleeping Naruto with a grumble as he rubbed his fingers across his eyes. Releasing a loud yawn, he stumbled across his apartment, before barking off a grumbling. "I'm coming already." "Hurry up already, brat," a rather familiar voice called out as he couldn't help but groan softly in recognition. "Damn it, Anko," the boy groused as he pulled the door open, glaring with sleep-glazed eyes at the broadly grinning woman. "What the hell do you want so goddamned early?" "Eesh, someone's in a bad mood." The woman grinned as she sauntered into his apartment uninvited. "So, this is the abode of the arch-enemy of the Feather Dusters, huh?" "Feather Dusters?" The boy blinked, eyes still glazed as he fought back a yawn. "Arch-enemy? You do remember the stunt you pulled yesterday, don't you, brat?" The woman grinned as she pulled up a chair, watching as the boy scratched at his shirt-covered side. "Hence why I was still sleeping," the boy spat back. "You know, with the nice warm bed, and the pillows, and the nice bliss of unconsciousness. The thing people do after they exhaust themselves." Yeah, the woman waved off the boy's grumblings with a negligent flick of her wrist. "Quit being a wuss already and have a seat." She paused a moment, before adding with a grin. "Nice boxers, by the way." The boy glanced down at the toad print boxers before shrugging softly. Hinata-chan got him for me." The woman twitched slightly as he eyed the boy speculatively. 13 and having girls buy underwear for you." "No, 13 and having the Hyuga clan heiress buying underwear for me," the boy corrected with a sleepy smirk as he walked over to put a kettle on the stove. "Can't trust random girls. Can't trust where they've been and all." "Kid." The woman just shook her head before barking off a loud chuckle. "You never cease to amaze." "If I did, I wouldn't be me now, would I?" The boy grinned back as he stretched out lightly, then ducked his head into his pantry. Ramen. Dango." The woman called back tauntingly as she smirked where she sat. "Ramen," the boy countered, holding up a package of instant ramen in his hand. "Dango," the woman responded with a smirk, as she began to toss emptied dango skewers at the boy. "Ramen," the boy countered, catching and deflecting the skewers with the package. "Bah, you're no fun if you don't let me make a pincushion out of you," the woman pouted with a grin. "So," he started, as he pulled the skewers from the package, wincing some as he saw the busted noodles inside. "What brings you here to drag my ass out of my nice, comfortable bed at this ungodly hour, Anko-chan?" "The new Naruto dartboard in the ANBU lounge. Some questions, and I wanted to get here before you're too busy with your snuggle happy pet heiress." She smirked back at him as she lounged carelessly in her chair. "You should be careful. Irika-sensei might get jealous." The boy grinned back at her. "Of you? Don't count on it, squirt." The woman grinned back at the boy. "Uhu, tell me, Anko-chan." The boy suddenly took on a rather wicked smirk as he watched her from the kitchen. "Do you really want to give me that challenge?" The woman paused, looking at the boy with narrowed eyes that seemed to glint with a malicious promise she was all too familiar with, at least from the other side. She considered before grumbling. As she shook her head, "Even I'm not that crazy, brat." "Good to know." The boy responded cheerfully as he dropped the noodles into a bowl and waited for the water to heat up. "So, Feather Dusters? Yeah, guess you haven't heard then. The woman grinned back at him. That's AMBU's new nickname after your little stunt with the feather and glue tags. Oh boy, there was a soft groan as the woman could hear him, banging his head softly against the countertop. Now I know they're gonna kill me. Nah, they can't do anything to ya. The woman grinned as she held up an envelope and tossed it to the boy. The Hokage wanted me to give you that. Eh. Curiously, the blonde opened up the envelope and then blinked, before blinking again as he read the letter inside of it. Boy, damn it, I knew that last bit was too much. Yeah, that last bit saved your ass, kid. The woman grinned back at him as she chuckled. The Hokages decided to commission you to do random evaluations of ANBU and various other shinobi groups in Konoha. Wait. The boy paused a moment, letting the information slowly sink into his mind as the last bit of sleep seemed to leave him. Does this mean what I think it means? I don't know. The woman responded casually, her nails suddenly becoming the most interesting thing she could find. What do you think it means? A license to prank any ninja group from Konoha. As long as I submit a report of my findings to the Hokage, the boy grinned downright evilly as he lightly licked his lips. Which brings me to my next bit of news. The woman responded as she grinned back at the boy. I'm going to be a Jounin sensei. The boy blinked a moment, before narrowing his eyes and pouting. Damn it, you're doing that just so I can't get you. Who, me? The woman smiled back at him with her eyes fluttering. Do I seem the type to abandon a sinking ship, leaving my comrades to their fate? Nope, you're the type to switch ships in port, so you don't get caught in the storm you know's coming. The boy countered before pausing. Meh, I hate you. The woman paused, lightly tapping her lip in consideration. Who knows? I could even get an all kunoichi team. Train the girls to be real kunoichi, give them uniforms, have them practicing there. Skills with you as the practice dummy. I hate you very much. The boy growled as he dug into his noodles, grumbling softly. Blame Irika, the woman shrugged. He's the one that got me all fired up about teaching. Blaming Irika sounds good. The boy nodded as he finished off his noodles. Limitations? Anko tapped her lips lightly with one finger before shrugging. No damaging the goods. Sounds fair. The boy responded with a nod as he stretched out before pulling off his shirt and scratching his side as he walked towards his bathroom. I'm taking a shower. If you want a bowl of ramen, feel free. What? I can't watch. The woman grinned back at the boy as he turned his head, then just gave her a look. Pedo. He grumbled softly before locking himself in his bathroom. You're no fun, the woman shot back. I'm tons of fun, the muffled response could be heard. I just prefer my fun in nice healthy ways, instead of being gawked at by drooling psycho bitches. Yeah, you know you love me. Only because I was apparently dropped on my head as a child. A lot. A few minutes later, Naruto was enjoying the hot water rushing down over his body, as he took a moment to consider his options. He knew today was the day, his first real day of being a ninja. It was an exciting and at the same time frightening experience all at once. This was his first real step towards achieving his goal and proving the power of his style. Unable to suppress his grin, he finished up his shoulder before quickly toweling dry and going about the rest of his morning routine. Pulling his boxers quickly back up, he yawned once more before walking out of the bathroom, toweling off his head, only to blink in surprise when he found the blushing form of Hinata sitting in a chair next to the widely grinning Anko. For a moment, the boy simply blinked, canting his head to the side as he looked from girl to woman. Maybe I should have left my boxers in the bathroom after all. In Naruto-kun, the pale-eyed girl's blush almost seemed pure crimson as she stared back at him, a small drop of blood hanging down from her nose before she turned away, starting to giggle softly as she stared off into the distance. Yeah, you sure have a way with women, hubrat. Anko chuckled as she watched the way the girl quickly became lost in her own little fantasy. She normally like this? Only when she's thinking about what's in my boxers, the boy responded with a shrug, as the girl seemed to blush even more at the comment, though seemed to not notice otherwise as she kept staring off into space. She'll wake up eventually, or I'll start petting her and she'll wake up. One of the two. Petting her, that brought a chuckle past the woman's lips as she would cant her head lightly to the side, mimicking the boy's usual gesture. My, how kinky. Stroking her hair, you perv, he chuckled as he pulled one of his mesh shirts down over his head and stretched it across his chest and arms. She's like a little puppy sometimes, I swear. Unfortunately for Naruto, Hinata's mind immediately latched onto that idea as she began to mumble, just loud enough for Anko to hear. Oh yes, I've been a naughty puppy. Naruto-kun should punish his naughty puppy. Yes, Naruto-kun. Anko blinked a moment before suddenly found herself struggling to hold back her laughter, her warm brown eyes shining with amusement as she quickly grew red from the exertion. Oh, I think, little Hinata-chan, agrees with you there, brat. Eh. The boy blinked as he was pulling up his pants, looking over to where Hinata was lost in her happy little world, mumbling and nodding eagerly to herself as the small trickle of blood grew beneath her nose. What's she saying? Oh, a little of this, a little of that. The woman grinned back, her face still red from the exertion to hold in her laughter. A lot of blackmail material and whatnot. You wouldn't be thinking of threatening my Hinata-chan. Now would you, Anko-chan? He put a particular emphasis on that last syllable as his eyes grew frosty. Oh, you're Hinata-chan. The woman grinned back, leaning slightly forward. And what makes you think that, huh, brat? Easy. The boy turned his attention towards the Hyuga girl as he fastened his pants into place, before calling in a firm, clear tone. Hinata-chan. Heel. The girl instantly perked up as he called her name, her glazed eyes immediately locking onto his. Before at his command, she barely had time to nod as she bounded off the chair and almost leapt over to his side, quickly nuzzling against him. Smirking back at Anko, he ran his fingers through the girl's hair. Good girl, Hinata-chan. Innuendo-kun. The girl blinked as she came out of her daze, blushing softly as she pressed lightly back against his stroking fingers, happily tightening her grip on his body. Naruto-kun's so warm. See, told you. The boy smirked back at the gaping Anko. But what? How? The woman only stared at the boy and the quietly blushing girl that pressed so eagerly against him. Well, the truth is, he smiled as he leaned a bit closer, his voice carrying in a stage whisper. It's a secret. I swear, brat. The woman growled softly as she glared back at the boy. One of these days, you'll realize how hopelessly outclassed you are by the magnificence that is me. The boy grinned back at her innocently before looking down at the girl clinging to his side. Hinata-chan, could you get my coat for me? You know where I tend to leave it. The girl gave a little whimper as she looked up at the boy, snuggling tighter against his chest as she looked up at him, wordlessly, pleadingly as she rubbed her cheek against his chest. With a sigh, he looked down at her. Please, Hinata-chan? For me? For a moment, the girl sniffled softly, resisting before she looked up into those gentle blue eyes and felt herself just melting. With a reluctant little nod, she let go of him before scampering off to his closet as quickly as she could. After watching her go, the boy turned back to Anko and gave her a simple, firm look as he sat down and began to pull his socks and boots on. Mine. So I see, kid, so I see. The woman shrugged a bit as she looked at the boy. Not sure how healthy that is, though. He shrugged a bit and gave her a look. We're shinobi. There isn't much healthy about most of our lives, remember? True enough, I suppose, kid. The woman nodded before she gave him a look. Just make sure she doesn't become a liability. She won't, the boy responded as he quickly finished with his boots. She just needs someone to care for while she gets her confidence back. Sure, Romeo, sure. Anko chuckled as she watched Hinata clutching Naruto's black coat to her chest as she shyly brought it back up to him. Thank you, Hinata-chan, he said with a smile, casually taking the coat from her as he felt its comfortable embrace wrapping about his body before he lightly ran his fingers through the girl's hair. The girl grinned in response before, suddenly pushing the boy down onto his couch and climbing into his lap and curling up against his chest with a contented sigh. You're welcome, Naruto-kun. Well, she knows what she wants at least, right, Anko-chan? The boy responded with a laugh as he lightly resumed stroking the girl's hair. All right, I'll leave you two cuddle monsters alone for the time being. She chuckled just a bit as she watched the happy blush on Hinata's face as the girl nuzzled underneath the boy's chin. Don't forget to show up for your team selections, though. Yeah, tell her. Not me. The boy grinned softly as he would lightly wrap up the girl in his arms. She's the one determined to turn me into her teddy bear. I was talking to her. Anko smirked back, and it looks far more like she wants to have you make her your teddy bear. Hinata blushed heavily at that before shaking her head and giving Anko a pointed look. Nope, his puppy. Yeah, just make sure you remember her tags and leash then, brat. The woman barked off a laugh as she watched the two with amusement in her eyes. Otherwise, you might just find yourself in trouble with the Inazukas for stealing their bit. I'll take Hinata-chan over Akamaru any day. The boy shot back at the departing woman. She smells much nicer. The teasing grin he sent down at the girl was returned with a blush and a light poke of the finger against his stomach. If that's all you like about me, maybe I should see how Kiba treats his puppies. You're just trying to talk yourself into a collar, Hinata-chan. The boy teased back as he lightly continued to stroke his finger through her hair. So, the girl blushed in response as she turned her soft pale eyes onto him with full puppy force. Haven't I earned it, Naruto-kun? Your father would kill me. The boy reminded her gently as he stroked her hair. Remember? The girl blushed for a moment, before she silently activated her eyes, making sure no one was watching as she reached into her jacket and pulled out an aged photograph. He's not one to talk, Naruto-kun. Huh? The boy blinked in response, before he looked down and twitched slightly as looked at the picture, his sensei, standing in her favorite outfit, holding onto a leash, leading to Hinata's father Hayashi, bare-chested and kneeling in nothing more than a pair of black leather pants. Okay, I guess you do take after your father more than I thought. The girl only blushed even wilder as she pressed back against his body. So Naruto-kun? The boy coughed a bit as the girl nuzzled more against him. Let me think about it, Hinata-chan, he said gently and stroked her hair. Let's make sure we can be an effective ninja team first, all right? A look of disappointment flashed across the girl's eyes before she gave a reluctant nod. All right, Naruto-kun. The then narrowed those beautiful pale eyes as she gave him a slight glare. But you better not keep me waiting too long. Wouldn't dream of it, Hinata-chan. Wouldn't dream of it. He chuckled as he kept stroking the girl, holding her close, cuddling her until it was finally time for them to head to the academy for their assignments. At the Rancher Academy. All right, everyone. Take your seats. I'll begin calling out your three-man teams. Irika spoke up, just before he was grabbed from behind and pushed down into his chair. Hey, what? Anko. Don't mind your instructor, kids. He's just forgetting that he's supposed to be staying off his feet, doctor's orders and all. The spiky-haired woman grinned, hips cocked lightly to the side as she stood in front of the class, ignoring the gawking stares more of the boys were giving her. So, I'm here to make sure he follows the doctor's orders. Anko, the man growled softly as the woman stood over him. Now, let Nurse Anko make sure you're a good boy. The grinned before slipping down into his lap and smirking back at the room. Gotta make sure he stays off his feet after all. If she's a nurse, fill me up a prescription for love, the wild-haired Kiba Inazuka called out with a quiet howl. Careful, or this nurse might just write out a prescription for a dog boy to get fixed. Anko shot back, a kunai twirled about her finger, the old-fashioned way. Air, right. Irika coughed softly as he shifted about in his chair, finding himself enjoying his position just a bit too much. Now, let's get on with the team assignments. Now let's see here. The woman plucked the clipboard out of her boyfriend's hand. Yes. How interesting. The wicked giggle that escaped her lips echoed through the room as the assorted genin couldn't help but feel a shiver racing down their spines. Hey. Bad Anko. The man grunted as he would reproachfully tug the clipboard out of the woman's hands. All right, Team 1 will be. Poor Irika-sensei. Naruto chuckled just a bit as he leaned against Hinata. Anko really likes him. Yes, she does. The girl nodded and grinned. She's just marking what's hers, Naruto-kun. Oh, the boy arched a brow as he looked down at the girl snuggling at his side. Do I need to be worried about you doing the same? Oh no. Naruto-kun. The girl responded with an aghast expression on her face. I'm waiting for you to mark me as yours. I see. The boy responded neutrally as he lightly pet the girl atop her head. Team 7 will be Kiba Inuzuka, Shino Aburame, and Sasuke Uchiha. Your Jounin instructor will be here for you after lunch. Irika spoke up. Be ready for a long wait, Anko added impishly. He's never on time. Several groans could be heard from various female hopefuls as they realized that none of them had ended up on the same team as Sasuke, much to their chagrin. Smirking softly, Naruto leaned in as he whispered softly into Hinata's ear. Looks like Sasuke gets the kind of team he'd want. Hinata giggled softly in response as she nodded, listening as Irika continued. Team 8 will be Shikamaru, Sakura Haruno, and Chuji Akimichi. Your Jounin instructor will also be here after lunch. Hope you like the smell of smoke. Anko added in with a grin as she casually ran a finger over the scar running over Irika's nose. Ahem. Irika coughed as he gave a pointed look at Anko. Team 9 is still in circulation from last year. So, Team 10 will be Hinata Hyuga, Naruto Uzumaki, and Ino Yamanaka, your Jounin instructors. Are me and Naichan. Anko grinned as she jumped up from Irika's lap as another, dark-haired, and red-eyed woman swirled into view. So, gather round girls and boy. Hey, how come he gets to be around all the babes, and I'm stuck with Bug Boy and stuck up his ass? Kiba demanded. His lips twitching, Naruto looked pleadingly at Anko, before she gave a small little nod in permission. Hey, can I help it if I'm just that damned good Inuzuka? That innocent grin curled on his lips as he casually guided Hinata to her feet, his arm wrapped gently about the small of her back. Some of us actually know how to treat a lady. What's that supposed to mean? Kiba growled back. Ask your sister. The boy shot back as he gave a light bow to Ino as she strutted past, her lips curled in a slight grumble before she nodded in acknowledgement. Now if you'll excuse me, I have to be going now, to the tender mercies Irika-sensei knows so well. Irika was struggling himself now, trying to hold back his own laughter as he watched the show, before looking back at the groups with a grin. All right, make sure you all make me proud. How the hell does he get all the luck? Kiba's scream could be heard echoing through the halls, following after the group of 4. However, the instant they were out of sight, the smirk on Naruto's face instantly fell as he pointed a finger at Anko. No, that was not an invitation. What? Did I say anything? She responded in amusement as she turned her head towards the other woman. Naichan, did I say anything at all? No, I don't believe you did, Kurenai admitted, before taking a moment to study the boy in front of them. However, I don't think you needed to. Wah! The wicked grin lay spread across the spiky-haired woman's face as she leered back at Kurenai. Whatever could you possibly mean, Naichan? Someone mind telling me what's going on? There was a nervousness to Ino's voice as she spoke up, eyeing Naruto and the two women warily. Anko-chan here has nothing even remotely resembling mercy. Naruto jerked his thumb in the brown-eyed woman's direction. She's a crazy bitch, who likes to dump snakes on people for fun. Now, you're going to give her a bad impression of me. The woman grinned back at the boy, her eyes alight with ill-concealed mischief. And on the first day, too. Kurenai-sensei. Naruto spoke up, pointedly ignoring the pouting Anko was giving him. I'm going to assume that you're here to keep her from getting us killed? Well, I don't believe it was put quite so bluntly. There was a pause as the red-eyed woman lightly tapped her lip, but that does sound like the general gist of the situation. She can't be that bad, can she? The blonde girl spoke up in a tone of protest, her blue eyes wide as she would look carefully at Anko. I mean, I know she's dressed like a slut and everything, draped herself all over Irika-sensei like a whore, and MMPH. Ino's words were quickly cut off by a sudden rubber ball being shoved into her mouth as she found her wrists tied behind her back and her ankles bound together. As her eyes widened in shock, she suddenly found herself tossed over Naruto's shoulder and hauled away. As she began to struggle and protest, she was greeted with the sight of just why he'd done what he did. There was Anko, fire burning in her eyes, and kunais in hand, struggling against Kurenai as she attempted to give chase. Bring that little bimbo back here. The angry screech continued as she woman struggled over and over again, calling me a slut and a whore. Let Giolo. SS sorry Anko-sensei be bud. Hinata bowed quickly to the still struggling woman before she reached out, striking a series of points on the woman's body, draining her of her strength. Why we was shouldn't try to kill Ino-san. The girl paused a moment before those pale eyes hardened, especially when she's being carried by my Naruto-kun. With that, the normally shy and reserved Hinata Hyuga gave a sudden, swift kick to the still struggling woman's shin before crossing her arms about her chest. Damn it, you little bitch. Anko seethed as she turned her attention to the little girl standing next to her. Anko-sensei. The girl's voice took in a peculiar twist, eerily familiar to Anko herself as she looked up into the woman's eyes with a calm, sweet, almost sadistic little smile. Did you know that with the right gentle fist strike, I can destroy your ability to feel anything between your legs? Both women suddenly froze as they looked down at the girl smiling so sweetly up at them, as she would reach out and with one finger, lightly tap against the front of Anko's skirt. All it takes is one strike and a bit of chakra. From what I understand, it's quite painful, causes every nerve to suddenly ignite all at once, then simply burn out. Her eyes crinkled a bit. I would hate to think of just what that could do to someone, wouldn't you? Slowly, both Anko and Kurenai found themselves nodding as the spiky-haired woman stilled her struggles, gulping audibly as she shakily nodded her head. Yes, that doesn't sound pleasant at all. I know. The girl nodded her head, before carefully sauntering off. I'm going to go find Naruto-kun and Ino-san. So what training ground do we need to meet you at? 13. Kurenai spoke up, carefully eyeing the little girl as she walked away. Good. We'll meet you there. The girl waved lightly back at them, before looking over her shoulder. Oh, and Anko-sensei? Air. Yes, Hinata. The woman watched the girl carefully. I'm Naruto's bitch, the girl said with a giggling wink. Before walking off, get it right next time. What the hell have you gotten me into, Anko? Kurenai turned her attention onto her friend as she slowly loosened her grip on the woman. Well, look at it this way. The woman in question nervously chuckled back. It's never gonna be dull. Kurenai sighed softly before she looked to her friend. So, what can you tell me about our team then? Well, I only really know Naruto. The Hyuga, somewhat. The bimbo, I only know the bits and pieces her dad lets slip. Anko shrugged a bit as she adjusted her coat. Naruto knows me pretty well, as you can tell. Set me up with Irika in there. He's a prankster, but he's a good kid for the most part, a lot like me in a lot of ways. That can't be good. Kurenai muttered with a sigh as she lightly pinched the bridge of her nose. Anything I should be aware of? Don't ever make fun or insult his style itself. Anko shivered softly. The results will not be pretty. That bad. Remember, a couple of days ago, the chunin, on the flagpole in the diaper, bib and bonnet? What about him? The red-eyed woman asked warily. That was the last guy that insulted the kid's style. Anko shivered slightly. If he wants to get you, he'll get you, no matter how good you are. If he's that good, how come he's failed 3 times already? The other woman blinked slightly as she raised her brow at her friend. From what Irika told me, to get on the same team as the Hyuga, the woman shrugged slightly. Something about a promise or something. All right, what can you tell me about Hinata then? The woman asked next as they both began to walk towards the training ground. Well, that depends. Which one we talking about? Anko shifted nervously. The cute, shy little cuddle-hungry puppy, or the scary little bitch we just saw? Cuddle-hungry puppy. There was an incredulous tone to the woman's voice as she spoke. Yeah, it's cute really. Anko grinned as she stretched back, warily trying to rub the chakra flow back into her arms. With Naruto, she's like a cute little puppy, always wanting him to snuggle and stroke her hair, and the boy's obviously protective of her, a bit enamored too, I think. I definitely don't think I'm going to be questioning him about her ability to function as a kunoichi anymore though. As Anko laughed, Kurenai frowned slightly before nodding. And the last girl? She's a Noichi's brat, the woman shrugged. Mind walker like him. A bit spoiled from what I've heard though. Not much else I could tell you other than she's apparently one of the Uchiha's fangirls if her response to him being on an all-male team is any indication. What's Naruto's style exactly anyway? The woman suddenly spoke up as she would arch a brow at Anko. Oh, you're gonna love this, she grinned viciously at her friend. Bondage style. Huh. The woman blinked quietly at the information. That would explain the ropes and the gag, I suppose. She paused as she half closed her red eyes. So, we've got a bondage ninja, a Hyuga, and a mindwalker, huh? Definitely a capture and interrogation squad then. Yup, isn't it going to be fun? The wild, devilish grin sent chills down Karinai's spine. I wonder about your definitely. You know that right, Anko? Came the response with a soft sigh. A safe distance away. You know, if a slow, painful death, there are easier ways to go about it, the male blonde said to the female hanging over his shoulder. You know, something like swallowing bleach or something. It'll be less painful in the long run. MMPH. MHPH. The grunted responses from the girl were caught by the stifling gag thrust into her mouth. Yes, I'm sure you could have handled yourself just fine, the boy responded with an acidic sarcasm. What with pissing off the most sadistic and psychotic kunoichi in Konoha. MMPH. There was an almost audible blink as her struggles ceased just a bit, making it easier for the boy to haul her through the woods before finally coming to a stop. You were seconds away from a bunch of snakes, all over your body, while Anko-chan plays How Many Places Can I Make You Bleed? The boy casually responded as he slung her from his shoulder down back onto the ground. It's one of her favorite games when someone pisses her off. MMPH. The girl struggled slightly again, shaking about in place as she gave the boy a look, lifting her feet as her eyes flickered to the ropes questioningly as he took a seat on a nearby log. Oh, they're chakra-enhanced ropes, the boy shrugged with a grin. Why you can't wriggle out of them like you normally can. As a thin line of drool was making its way down the girl's chin, as she glared silently back at him, leaving him to grin as he responded, No, I'm not going to release you yet. We're going to wait until Hinata-chan shows up and lets us know it's safe. There was an audible growl erupting from the girl's throat as she glared angrily at the boy, growling. I'll tell you what, I'll show you a trick while we're waiting. The grin on his lips was downright wicked as he raised his arms. See? Nothing up my sleeves, right? With a gesture, a coil of rope began to slither out, bit by bit as he watched her with a grin. It was a soft, almost gleaming silk rope, black and pure as he carefully began to loop it around in his hands. When he had it at the desired length, he gave one little tug, smiled as it finished its distance. Then, with her watching warily, his hands became a blur while the girl could feel faint pulses of chakra being used. When he finished, he was holding up a very strange-looking harness before her eyes. Now, I know what you're thinking. What kind of trick is that? He just went and tied a bunch of knots together. No big deal, right? The grin back at her as he watched the reluctant nod of her head. But you see, that's only part of the trick, the boring part to be honest. The wicked grin sent a chill down her spine as he held up the rope harness, then proceeded to make a series of hand signs, before finishing with a soft "H-A." Suddenly, the rope was no longer in his hands. In fact, it was no longer even visible at all. However, that wasn't to say she didn't know where it had gone. Oh no, she was most definitely aware of its presence, underneath her clothes. With a muffled, indignant squawk, she immediately burst into motion again, before noticing how her movements only seemed to grind the rope into more sensitive bits of her body. Instantly on the realization, she froze, then slowly, stiffly sat back down as she shot a death glare at the boy in front of her. She was more than slightly upset with him. What? Don't like that trick. He paused, cupping his chin with his thumb and finger. Well, I do have some others I could try. Instantly the girl began to violently shake her head, ignoring how it seemed to cause things to shift in oh so interesting a ways underneath her clothing. Seeing her reaction, the boy pouted softly. You're no fun. Starting the party without me, Naruto-kun? A soft, teasing voice spoke up from behind the blonde boy as immediately Ino's shoulders fell in a sigh of relief as she saw Hinata walking up. Just having a bit of fun before you showed up, Hinata-chan. He grinned softly as he would shift slightly to the side, making room for her to sit next to him. Oh, I see. The girl grinned softly before she settled down and immediately began to snuggle into Naruto's side. So, decided how we're going to punish her. Ino froze at Hinata's words as her eyes widened, bit by bit in fear as she shrank back against the tree in fear at Naruto's response. Oh, I've got a few ideas. How about you? The grin that Hinata showed Ino then almost made the girl break down into a quivering ball of fear as the Hyuga girl slowly spoke. Oh, just a few.
That's it for today. Remember to show your support to the creator of this story if you enjoyed it. If you would like more parts of the story to be uploaded, leave a comment and subscribe to get notified when the story continues. Bye-bye for now, and I hope that you all have a wonderful rest of your day.